Yo, what is up everyone, back here with another video. In today's video, I want to be going over the team I used to place number 2 in the Nino Poke Bros tournament. This was the first tournament of Scarlet and Violet that really took place with a good chunk of people. I was able to place second in it, and I wanted to just go over the tournament for you guys and kind of give you my overall thoughts on the metagame, along with how I put this team together. If you guys enjoy this kind of content, please be sure to let me know down below. Let me know what other kind of VGC content you guys would like to see as well. And yeah, without further ado, let's get right into it. So pretty much, I just want to take you through the thought process I had getting to my team first. So we're going to do that first, and then we're going to go into the other specific details with the team, right? So pretty much when it comes to this team as a whole, the main thing that really was a big deal for me was just kind of finding something that I was comfortable with to begin with, right? So like for me, like comfort was very important, right? And I kind of understood this like from the beginning. When you're usually starting early meta, the key is not to really like push out of your comfort zone too much. It's to use stuff that you're familiar with, but also like explore new ideas. So that's definitely something I was aiming to do with whatever team I used. And that was kind of my thought process going into it. And also I would recommend, like, even if you want taking notes, because this video is going to take you through the entire thought process I had while building this team, which might actually help you guys build your own teams. So pretty much, I was like, okay, so what is like something really that I like building my team around a lot, right? And immediately my mind jumped to like Roaring Moon and Fluttermane. And so these Pokemon are just incredibly strong. They exert a lot of pressure, and I wanted to kind of build around supporting these two Pokemon, right? So obviously, like, this team was kind of the backbone for what I was looking for. Then next, I came up with Arcanine to give myself a good defensive pivot for both of these Pokemon. I wanted to establish a more defensive core to actually allow these Pokemon to shine. And then Amoonguss finally, which did actually give me a lot of options to protect, protect these Pokemon. Now, this might look really familiar if you're a Patreon subscriber to a team that we have. And actually, yes, the first version of my Kingambit team was the Patreon team that is up there as a rental code. So first off, if you guys are interested, I do post all my teams on Patreon, as you know, I'm using them and stuff. And also too, you know, it's a great way to support the channel. But anyways, so the original patron base had Gyarados and Scizor on it, right? So this was the first team that I'd used in Scarlet and Violet, and this was I used on casual ladder. So I played a bunch of games with this, and immediately as I was playing, right, I pretty much was like detecting some issues that were kind of reoccurring with this team that I did not like. And pretty much the main issue that I had was that I was really crutching too hard on Roaring Moon, Fluttermane, Amoonguss, Arcanine, and then I had the Gyarados and Scizor there. But they weren't really doing too much for me. And it wasn't that I didn't like Gyarados, it's just on this specific team, like I didn't find myself using it too much. So the main issue that I was having was kind of doing enough, right? So pretty much like I was crutching, right, into the first four Pokemon of this team. And like, yeah, it was just not super great. I was kind of like not happy with the team, mostly because like if I'm using the first four and I'm never using like the last two, like then obviously like I'm missing something, you know? So then I kind of rethought like what I wanted from the last couple slots. And like I kind of looked back at it, I was like, okay, so I don't want Scizor, I don't want Gyarados, like what can I do to improve this team? And what I had done is then I had taken a look at, you know, one of the other teams that I had worked on with Sierra. So pretty much Sierra was also playing in this tournament, right? And the original version of the team that Sierra was using had a Rotom Wash. So to me, I was like, okay, well, this might be a better water type for me because now I might actually be able to utilize it to put on a lot of pressure, right? On my opponents with like special water moves. You know, to be able to like exert a lot of pressure there. And then I was like, okay, like where do I go from here, right? So pretty much the next step was Rotom Wash, right, to exert more damage on waters and other Pokemon. And basically with this Rotom, what I was thinking of is like, okay, so like I want this Fire, Water, Grass core. This overall lets me have a lot of bulk. And I'm like, what do I want as my last Pokemon? So I went through the last slot a lot. Actually, I think I found the other slot before I found Rotom, but it's fine. I found Kingambit, right? So I just tested this as like a thought for fun. Pretty much. Like, I was just like, okay, you know, like, this Pokemon's kind of cool. It's a Steel type. Like, it fills up my Fairy Dragon Steel core. I'm like, let me test it out, right? So, Kingambit, right? Kingambit was tested, right, as a pure Steel type. And then pretty much, I just found myself, like, not really liking, like, how trapped I was in because of the type. But then, I was playing some casual battles, and I see someone's Kingambit turn into a Terrafire Kingambit, right? So I'm like, oh. I'm like, wait, I can just use Terrestrialization on this to make this a type that works better for it, right? So then I started testing Terra Kingambit, right? And I started messing around with different types. And what I had settled on was Water Kingambit because it gave me access to Terra Blast, right? So it gave me a couple things, right? Access to Terra Blast, to pressure opposing fire types. Solid defensive typing overall, right? And it made me take any super effective fighting moves for normal. And let me move this up so you guys can see. For normal damage. And then because of Kingambit's bulk, this synergized super well, right? And then I thought of the main other thing that people do to deal with, like, Defiant users with Arcanine, and then I put a Lumberry, right? I put a Lumberry to prevent burns heading towards Kingambit. Burns and sleeps on Kingambit. So, like, yeah, it ended up being, like, the best item choice for it, by the way. I think Lumberry was, like, actually crazy on it. And I had the debate pretty much, like, I'm not going to reveal EV spreads because that is something that is Patreon exclusive. I do leave that exclusive for Patreon, so I don't want to, you know, people are paying for that, so obviously I'm not going to, like, leak EVs or anything. But, the Kingambit, I did decide I was going to make it bulkier, right? So it was a bulkier Kingambit, and I wanted to spec into the bulk as well. So anyways, so I have this team, right? And I'm like, okay, so I'm going to use this, tomorrow, right? I have more than enough options between all of my different things I can do. I am really content with this, and, like, this is what I want to do tomorrow. And then I'm, like, playing some games, and, like, I play some games with Sierra's team that she's using, and I'm like, I don't know, like, something about this doesn't feel right? I'm like, I like Kingambit, but I don't like the rest. And, like, at this point, I was not taking Roaring Moon at all. Like, every game I was playing, like, Roaring Moon was not coming, right? And, like, Rotom and Arcanine were fine, but I wasn't using them enough to where I was like, oh, this is really good. So then I was like, all right, I'm just gonna, like, axe, like, it's like, I'm just gonna axe, like, 90% of the team. So, like, then I go back to this, right? So then I literally just go to these two, you know? And I knew I still wanted an Intimidator, but I ended up changing it to Gyarados because I felt like Gyarados gave me a bit better of what I was looking for in terms of an Intimidator for this core. So basically, right, took the Kingambit, right, Amoonguss from the team, and utilized that, right? And then I remember too, I had played versus my friend, right? Jones, so NJ11, if you guys don't know, he's built, like, a lot of cool teams. He built the Players Cup 3 winning team. The way he builds is very unique from, like, everyone else, so it's good for, like, even getting ideas sometimes when I play versus him. So I played versus him, right? Playing versus him, I experimented, right? Experimented with Grimmsnarl and Gyarados, right? So these two Pokemon were pretty much, like, Pokemon that I originally wouldn't have considered, but after seeing, like, NJ using them, I was like, okay, you know what, like, maybe I'll give these two a shot, right? And the Grimmsnarl specifically, right, was something that I used because of him. Gyarados, I probably would have tried either way, but Grimmsnarl, after I saw how effectively he was using it, I was like, all right, like, I might as well give this a shot, you know what I mean? The only difference is that I also saw this on a Japanese player's team. So if you guys don't know, like, when I build too, like, and I think this is the key to, like, successfully building at a high level, you pay attention to everything, right? What you're, you know, like, even working with your friends, your own teams, your own habits that you notice, ladder, like, Japanese teams. Like, I was looking at everything for this, right? So I considered, like, all these different things before I had made my team, right? And pretty much, I was like, okay, so I really like Grimmsnarl and Gyarados. I've seen other Japanese players use Grimmsnarl as well. And one was using a Light Screen, Reflect, Parting Shot, and Spirit Break set. So that's the one I wanted to use. And obviously I changed EVs and stuff to my liking, but more so, like, I wanted that specific move set, right? So then finally I was like, okay, so I have a really solid core here, but like, what do I want? And then I looked at the team I built for Sierra, and the team I built for Sierra had a Garchomp on it. And what I really liked about Sierra's team was not the Talonflame Garchomp. I really liked Gyarados Garchomp, right? So I add Garchomp to the team, and it feels really good, right? This gives me like a good, it gives me a good like Quake mode, like Earthquake mode with the Gyarados. And I'm like, okay, like what do I want to have on this Gyarados? So then I'm like, okay, what synergizes well? And like this also came from Sierra's team. I'm like Helping Hand. So, and I end up running Helping Hand Gyarados for the tournament, right? And I end up having Waterfall, and I end up having Terra Blast, right? With Flying type. So this just synergizes really well naturally with the Garchomp that I was using. And it was able to exert a lot of pressure, basically, right? And what this allowed me to do was it allowed me to start playing around with these typing changes that Terrestrialize gives you and utilize new options on the team, right? And honestly, like, I think that playing around with different types, this was supposed to be Steel, by the way, on my pace, but I had Fairy because I ran out of time to, like, actually properly, like, change my Grimmsnarl because I didn't have enough Terra Shards. So I ended up having to use Fairy. But yeah, anyways, so, like, this was a pretty established core, right? So, like, at this point, I'm like, okay, like, I have a majority of what I want here. Like, this is pretty on track with, like, what I'm looking for, right? So then I'm like, okay, how do I go from here in terms of what like would really be a good filler for the last? I noticed like I don't really have anything to break through opposing steel types, and I noticed I don't really have anything to break through opposing water types, right? So the natural last choice for me was Rotom Heat, and like this isn't a Pokemon that I had seen at all, but I was like, you know what, like Rotom Wash was fine in testing and it was good, but it felt like it was lacking something. So I'm like, I'm just gonna use Rotom Heat, dude. And like the reason why it was so good is because it gives me another Pokemon to Earthquake next to, right? It also synergizes super well with Amoonguss, right? It synergizes really well with Gyarados, and like I could literally I have like multiple cores in this team now, right? I have Amoonguss, Rotom, Garchomp, Gyarados. I have Grimmsnarl King Gambit with Rotom and Amoonguss, right? I have Grimmsnarl King Gambit, Garchomp, Rotom, right? And then I also have King Gambit, Grimmsnarl, Gyarados, Rotom, right? So like I have a lot of different cores that I could utilize, right? So the team gave me a lot of flexibility. So team gave me a lot of flexibility, right? So then pretty much like as well too, like I built this team the morning of. So like these changes I made super last minute. So I literally made these changes like at like 9 a.m. and the tournament started at like 12. So I literally just made this like 3 hours before. I was able to get a Grimmsnarl traded to me by Dragonair Jordan. Eli, thank you first off for trading me the Grimm so I could get it ready fast enough. I EV'd it and everything in game. I was able to get it in time. And then Pato, my mod, did the Rotom, which was super awesome. So thank you, Pato, as well. So Pato was able to get the Rotom for me as well. He was able to breed it and everything, which was cool. He had to try like 20 times or something because the egg kept rolling like Ghost type because it's a Rotom, obviously, before. And like, yeah, I didn't have the Rotom catalog, so like Pato was able to do it for me. But yeah, anyway, so like I had the team, I was pretty content with it. And like going into the first round of the tournament, I'm like, okay, great. Like I finally get to play the game. And then like round one, right, is just like a no-show. So I'm like, okay, you know, like this isn't super phenomenal. I guess before I go into the tournament anyways, here, let me go actually a little bit more over. So what I'll do is I'll give you guys the general sets, but I won't like give the EVs, obviously. The EVs and everything will be on Patreon, right? And I also post team guides on Patreon as well, like how to use the teams. So I decided to go with Akaberry on Amoonguss specifically so I wouldn't be too weak to opposing like fire moves. It gave me better answers besides just terrestrializing into water type, and also gave me more stuff to be oppressive towards like stuff like Chi-Yu, pretty much. For Rotom, I went with Specs, right? And obviously I had Discharge on it, but I had Overheat, Thunderbolt, Volt Switch, Discharge, right? And then Garchomp, I went with Life Orb for extra damage. I went with Earthquake, Rock Slide, Dragon Claw. I just didn't see much value in like setting up with Garchomp because like to me like this team wanted to like immediately go on the offense, and like King Gambit was already the one that was going to get a boost if anything, punishing like opposing Pokemon, right? So then like King Gambit, I gave it Iron Head, Sucker Punch, Terra Blast for water, and then I gave it Protect, and pretty much like Terra Blast Water was just incredibly strong for just being able to put on a bunch of pressure versus the opponents, because pretty much like stuff like Arcanine or like even, you know, ground types that thought that they'd just beat me, like I would Terra into a water type and just absolutely destroy them, and like they wouldn't even like see it coming. So it was super nice. And then I had what was it, Light Clay, Spirit Break, Light Screen, Parting Shot, Reflect, right? And the main thing with all these mons pretty much was that like they all gave me the flexibility I needed on the team to deal damage. You'll notice that like I had very little setup on the team, and like that was intentional. I didn't really want to like spend my turns clicking Swords Dance or anything. I wanted to be bulky enough where I could pivot consistently, but be getting like good damage while I was doing it, right? So instead of like focusing on the team, like more so being like passive, like setting up, like this just gave me enough options to really like pressure the opponent, right? Now I will say there were a few like weaknesses with this team as is, because I had a Fairy Steel type on the Grim. That was really bad in the Chien-Pao Dragonite. I actually really like, so the whole point of the Steel type was actually for Dragonite. But I forgot to have it on. If I had it on, like this matchup into Chien-Pao Dragonite's totally fine, because you could just lead King Gambit and Grimmsnarl, and you could just Terra Steel turn 1 and like reflect, and they can't really do anything to you. Or like they have to make a call rather. But because of the situation with the fairy type Grim, like you kind of have to outplay like the hell out of the person, so it's a little bit harder, right? But yeah, anyways, like overall the team felt like pretty strong, but we'll go into talking a little bit more about the meta and like how I felt the team matched up into the meta. So when thinking about the meta, pretty much I had like a couple of things that I was pretty much considering as like the main compositions, right? So pretty much when it comes to these compositions I thought were popular, I was worried about a couple particular pairs, right? So Fluttermane and Chi-Yu were one, right? Chien-Pao Dragonite was on my mind, but not near as prominent as it actually was. Garganical plus anything was pretty much, plus like bulky stuff was annoying, so that's why I had Clear Smog on Amoonguss and I had Spore. Or well, Spore didn't matter, but Spore was for like all the other partners. And then like Ting-Lu, right? Ting-Lu was also really annoying if I like wasn't able to position around it properly. And then I also had kept Trick Room in mind too when I was like building my team. That's why I had Akaberry on the Amoonguss, but Akaberry ended up just being really good in general because a lot of people had Arcanine. So I was able to just kind of sit there in front of it. So pretty much like all these different factors like were what went into my team building strategy. So Fluttermane Chi-Yu was actually pretty bodied by King Gambit plus Grimmsnarl, especially because I could change it to water type. Chien-Pao Dragonite, again, if I had a steel type Grim, would have been way better, but I didn't, so it was actually pretty hard. Garganical was pretty like doable, to be honest. Like I was just able to Clear Smog it every time, and like even if they were a steel type Garganical, like it's also like just not optimal. So like I don't know why people would run it, because the thing is, right, is like you could say like, oh yeah, like but I wouldn't get Clear Smog, so I would run it, but then you lose to opposing Garganical anyways. So it's like a trade-off anyways, so you do lose a lot there, and like I'm not sure how many people would actually be willing to do that. Because losing to opposing Garganical like sucks, right? Like if it's an opposing Garganical Ghost, you already lost the game, you know? But yeah. So then Ting-Lu, pretty much all I had to do was just like kind of outlast it or like beat it, you know? And then Trick Room was same thing, like outlasting it and just slowing it down, right? So now we can go into actual cut, right? So these are all the teams that like did super well in the tournament that were relevant to, you know, the tournament run. So I had actually played versus a lot of this cut, right? I played versus Sotos. I played versus Ray. I did not play in this. I played versus Evelyn, and I played versus Fede in finals. Jarshal, I had coached. So you might notice Jarshal has that version of the team that I was talking about, my first version of the team. He's actually a student I've been coaching for only 2 months, and he was able to like pop off and do super well. And he gave me a really good set in top 8. Like he almost beat me, and like I was super proud because like obviously as a coach too, like that's pretty cool. You know what I mean? To like have one of your like students do super well. I'm gonna actually move my camera down so I could show you guys cut better. But like yeah, no, I was super proud because it was like cool to see him do well, especially to considering like I'd been coaching him, you know, so it's cool to see like the improvement. Like he played super well. He was using the King Gambit idea too, and it was still like really annoying. The Rotom Wash was really annoying for my team. It was actually really hard, and he was reading me pretty hard a couple of turns. So it was a very difficult game, but I was able to pull it out, which was super nice. And then in top 4, I play versus Ray. So the game versus Ray was also super intense. I don't know pretty much like how I want to do this, but I want to make a second channel, I think, to like post my tournament VODs so you guys can like go and watch them whenever you want. I just have to be careful because like I don't want to download the full VOD, but I think I might have to like post them. So I'll figure that out. But yeah, I can definitely work on like getting these posted eventually. But yeah, it was another Flutter main team, so I just had to be careful with that. Tyranitar was also something I didn't really expect to like be on the team, but like I was able to wall it pretty comfortably with King Gambit. Like King Gambit did not care about Tyranitar at all, so I was able to leverage it like pretty well into this team as well. King Gambit honestly came to like almost every set I used it in, or like every set. So like I brought King Gambit to game 3 here. I didn't bring it the first 2 games. I brought King Gambit to all 3 sets here, and I brought King Gambit to both games here. I got really unlucky game 1, and then Fede beat me game 2, but King Gambit was still really good. But yeah, me and Ray had a really close set. I lost game 1, and then game 2, game 3. I actually lost to getting flinched in game 1, and then game 2, game 3, I was able to clutch up and win. And then in finals, I played versus you know, the Chien-Pao Dragonite stuff, and again, like the Grim not being Steel type was like really bad for me. But I was able to bring it. Like I would have brought it pretty close game 1 if I wasn't getting crit. But you know, it ended up kind of being like a wash in game 2 just because like the Chien-Pao Dragonite went too strong. But overall, I'd say it was like a pretty solid tournament. Like I was pretty content with how it went, all things considered, because I was able to like put a team together like last second and still perform well. And like I went undefeated in Swiss, so like I was feeling pretty good about my tournament. Like I went undefeated in Swiss. I went undefeated in Swiss, then I like was able to win all my cut games until finals. So pretty much like this team was undefeated up until finals, and I was like pretty content that like I was able to like keep such a good win streak. And even though I didn't keep up that streak of like winning the first tournament of like the new meta or whatever, it's still fine actually, because realistically, like it gave me everything I needed. Like this wasn't a prize tournament, so like I was pretty content with how it did, you know, with how I did. And like the big one coming up is probably the Victory Road Grassroots tournament, so that's the one I'm looking forward to as well. So hopefully this was a formative video for you guys. I just want to take you through my thought process and like, you know, kind of like how the entire process of building the team, everything went through. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to let me know if this content was like something that you guys enjoy, and if you guys would like to kind of see these breakdowns after I perform well with the team after tournaments. Once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for the support. I incredibly appreciate it. See you guys next video. Peace.